It's a struggle as old as social media itself. I know I should be posting and creating content, but I simply don't know what to post about or what kind of content to create. Jay Jackson, welcome to the Everyday VOpreneur Summer Series. What is your question and how can I help you?
Well, you phrased it very nicely, and thank you, Mark, for the opportunity. I want to participate, but I
Mhm.
want to participate originally. I want to participate authentically.
Yep.
I have no problem posting a repost. I have no problem reacting to somebody's statement. I have no problem giving, well, for instance, what I did several weeks ago, an impression upon what VO Atlanta meant to me. I had no
Yeah.
problem doing that. That came very natural. But now, when it comes to sharing thoughts about my journey or my reflection of journeys of peers and colleagues, I'm reluctant. I fear putting something out there, putting myself out there, if you will, knowing that it's got to have some pertinence, it's got to have some relevance. It scares me, and I don't
Sure.
mean that that way,
Yep.
but it scares me to put something that's worthy of engagement. That's where I'm at, and I know there are others. What say ye?
Rule number one is we have to allow ourselves to get outside of the voiceover box. And I think that's part of the struggle is we assume or we think that in order to create social media content that would have marketing value for our voiceover business, we need to be talking about voiceover all the time. And I don't think that that is true at all. I think that's what we think, but I don't think that it is true that you have to be talking about voiceover all the time. So that's one of the things that I would say. The other thing that I say is I think that we need to see ourselves as more than voice actors. I am an entrepreneur. I am a small business owner. I am a guy who is working from home. I am a dad with 4 daughters. I have a lot of different perspectives to bring to the table based on the different facets of me as a person. And so when I stop looking exclusively through the voiceover lens or assuming that I have to look exclusively through the voiceover lens, I think it opens up the door to a lot of other content opportunities. Now, I obviously do coach voice actors, so I am talking about voiceover more than what somebody else might. But for anybody who follows my content, I think you'll see there are times when I'm talking about voiceover as a voice actor. And there are times when I am talking about it through the lens of being a dad. And there are times when I'm talking about it through the lens of being a business owner. And so I'm bringing all of these different perspectives to the table based on who I am and all of those different aspects of me. And so a couple of questions that I think that you could be asking yourself that would help you to try to find what you could be talking about. Number one is, what am I interested in? So it could be specific topics that you're interested in. It could be specific aspects of voiceover just as easily as it could be barbecue and brisket, which I mean, you've seen me talk about barbecue and brisket on social media as well. Another question I think is, what do I know? I truly believe that everybody has something to teach everybody else because we've all got different life experience. We all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different educations. We've worked different jobs. We've been in different careers. Most of us don't just start out in voiceover from the womb. And so what else do I know that I could share that would be useful or that would be relevant? Tying into that, what skills do I have? I could teach marketing now. I didn't always have that skill, but I could just as easily talk about, my tips for making a Dr. Pepper barbecue sauce, right? Like it's just me tapping into me and the things that I know and the skills that I have. What have I learned? I think that is a huge one. Part of the reason why I have been able to achieve what I have achieved in my voiceover business is because of the fact that I've never stopped learning how to be better at business. So not just how to be a better voice actor, because I obviously want to continue to learn that as well. But I want to learn, how do I get better at marketing? How do I get better at social media? How do I do a better job of saving on my taxes? How do I do a better job of working with my clients and providing exceptional service and being great with customer care? And so learning all of these different things. And so for me, as I've learned those lessons over the years, those become things that I can share, because I always assume that if this was helpful for me in my business, then it might be helpful for somebody else in their business. And then I think about what is helping me. So I listened to a really great podcast. I really read a really great book. I came across a really interesting blog article. I found a new app, or I subscribed to a new service, or things like that that are helping me. And I think we've all had those moments and those tools that we've come across. What have I discovered? So those are some of the questions that I am leaning into. So I don't know if that makes it better or worse for you at this point. Does it give you more to think about, or does it help you to start to narrow down and think, okay, I could go there?
There are some ideas that this gives a little bit more credence to. I'll take, and not go into detail, but I'll take my former career, the one that I've
Yes.
retired from, and it's music education
Okay.
focused. And there's so much of what I'm doing now that's going into this microphone. There's so
100%.
much that I'm saying to you in the manner in which I'm saying it that is translatable. Can I put that in quotes? That's translatable to what we do as voice actors. That maybe when it comes time to talk about pitch, timbre, cadence, flow, melody, etc., maybe there's correlation there that I could
100%.
share. Something like
100%. Absolutely. And that's the stuff that I'm talking about. It's it's inside the voiceover box, but it's outside of the voiceover box. And I think we get nervous because we're not all coaches, and we don't all want to be coaches, and we don't want to be perceived as coaches. And so we're very cautious to talk about voiceover in case somebody thinks that we're trying to make ourselves a coach or position ourselves as a coach. But when you have that kind of background, that kind of education, skill set, training, et cetera, that you can lean into, and you can relate that to what you're doing today, if that's who your audience is, then relate it. Like, why not? Tell that story. The other side of this, and I recently did an interview with Melanie Scroggins, and we talked about starting a podcast. And part of what we got into with starting a podcast was this notion that there are voice actors who want to start a podcast, but they think the world doesn't need another voiceover podcast. And it probably doesn't need another voiceover podcast at this point. But the point that I was making with Melanie, and she did a brilliant job of explaining this, was how you can talk about just about anything in a podcast and that it could still become a marketing tool for your voiceover business. Because part of all of this content creation and content strategy, part of it is building an audience. And if you build an audience, particularly when you do what we do, somewhere in that audience, there may be somebody who needs voiceover, and there may be somebody who wants to inquire with you and hire you for voiceover. And so that's something else that I think that we need to be thinking about as well. And another thing that I say too, when I post stuff on social media, one of my favorite things is when somebody responds and they're like, "Mark, get out of my head," or "Mark, I feel like you're accusing me," or "Mark, why are you gonna call me out like that?" or whatever. And people feel like I'm literally directing messages specifically to them. And it makes me laugh because I have said for years and continue to say, 90% of what you see me share on social media is me talking to me. It's me calling myself out and reminding myself publicly. I may not specifically word it that way, but it's me talking to me, knowing that there are other people who are going to benefit from this lesson that I am currently trying to relearn or reiterate from myself. And so that's where I say, think about yourself outside of just being a voice actor. What are the things that you're learning that are helping you to be better at running your business, that are helping you to set bigger goals, that are helping you to be more productive, that are helping you to be more efficient, helping you to be a better father or husband or grandfather or uncle or partner or whatever. Like all of these things, it all becomes, I think there's relevance in all of it. You know, LinkedIn has said recently that they're gearing the algorithm towards educational content. They're trying to get away from, they don't want LinkedIn to become Facebook. Thank you. I don't want LinkedIn to become Facebook either. So then, of course, naturally, voice actors are like, well, educational content, but I don't want to teach voiceover. I'm like, no, 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 no. What did you learn today that helped you do something in your business better? That's educational content. And that's content that adds value. That's content that has relevance to other people who are trying to learn how to do business better. Little things like that can make a big difference too.
That makes a lot of sense, but there's one more component
Okay.
that I know that I think this way. I thought this way when maybe I wasn't publishing on the educational front, is that there are others that have, in a sense, gone before me or gone before us that say things and say things well that are mentor like. They put resources out there, and now I'll call you out, but they're putting resources for marketing. They're putting resources out there for negotiating pay to plays. They're putting resources out there for LinkedIn as an example. And it's said so well, and we follow those various people and we follow those resources. We invest in those resources that I don't think, at least I don't know. I know I can't say it better. I
Mhm,
can say it to say it works for me
mhm.
or has worked for me, or I'm going to employ more of it. And somehow I feel like I'm falling short of a standard or a mark that's already been made. What would you think about that?
I think that I do not have an original thought. And what I mean by that is all the stuff that I'm sharing on social media is a direct result of something that I've learned from somebody else. Whether I've learned it from reading a book or listening to a podcast or watching a webinar or going to a conference or whatever it is, I draw inspiration and information from countless sources. It's one of my, I'm a lifelong student, and I take all of those things that I learn and I internalize those things. And one of the ways that I learn is by teaching. So when I take in something new, and I am able to relay that to somebody else, to teach that in some way, that helps me to retain that information and absorb that information in a more in-depth way. And so I don't have an original thought. Like everything that I share, I've shared from somewhere else. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think when you take something that you see me say, how does it speak to you? How did that relate specifically to a challenge or to a struggle that you were having? How did that inspire you or motivate you? Or how did that help you to approach the situation from a different way? And so part of this too, and this is a big part of social media in general, is storytelling. It's telling your story for how that piece of information stuck with you, landed with you, made a difference for you, impacted you. So it's not even specifically that you have to relay the information over and over again. You can tell the story of how that information was helpful to you, and somebody else is going to read that and that's going to be how it's helpful to them. Or they're going to read that and say, I was in that session and this is what I walked away with. Somebody else, and then you get a series of engagements going on. And so I think there's that side of it too. I also think the educational side of things, I think there's value there. Obviously, that's what the LinkedIn algorithm is calling for, and that's some of the content that you see me share, and I've talked about that. But man, I also think that on social media, you should let people see you. What's Jay interested in? Right? You see me talk about barbecue. You see me talk about the Red Sox. You see me somehow manage to stick a Dr. Pepper into every single thing that I do on social media, even though I'm not getting paid for placement. But that's me. That's authentically me. When I'm at VO Atlanta and I'm walking around with a case of Dr. Pepper under my arm, like, people see that and they're like, "Mark," like, they make that connection. So but they wouldn't make that connection if they didn't see that side of me on social media, if they didn't see me talking about those things and sharing those things. And so I think one of the other content strategies that we can lean into and we need to not be afraid to lean into is just being authentically you. If it's true that people do business with people that they know, like, and trust, and that is true. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. Then use part of your social media strategy as a way for people to get to know, like, and trust you. And part of that just comes from being human. Everything doesn't have to be a hot take. It doesn't have to be an expert tip. It doesn't have to be a brilliant insight or an inspiring or motivational post. It could just be Jay doing what Jay does because this is a thing that Jay loves. And that's going to connect with a certain portion of your audience who may be interested in that same thing or love that same thing or want to talk about that same thing. You never know what the thing is that is going to make the connection. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and it's the encouragement that I'm getting that I hope others are also getting that, you know, there is I don't wanna use risk reward, that's too strong, but take a chance on being yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
why not? And
Yeah.
that's one of my takeaways here,
Yep.
to put yourself out there with not reckless abandon, that's not what we're saying either, but put yourself out there naturally, genuinely. It's fairly likely that somebody's a lot like you or looks like you or sounds like you, and, you may embolden them to do the very same thing. I don't know. That's the teacher in me coming out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's on point. So, I mean, look, we've been talking for 15 minutes and we've got a three-pronged social media approach now. Whether you realize it or not, we've just come out with a three-pronged social media approach. So, content pillar number 1 is personal J. So that becomes one of the pillars that you lean into is pick that thing that you want to talk about. Barbecue, Red Sox, Dr. Pepper. What is that thing that, personal J? What are the things that Jay is going to talk about that's going to give people an insight into you on a personal level? And if you came up with 50 of those posts leaning into personal J, which, hopefully at this point you could come up with 50 different things that you could talk about. You've lived with yourself long enough, right? That's a
Prob
year's worth of content sharing that content pillar once a week. Second pillar would be leaning into your learning. I read this, I listened to this, I watched this, I took this class. Here's what I walked away with. Here's a tip that I found really helpful. Here's an app that really impacted me. Here's a service that I've started using that's made a difference in my business. Here's a tip that I discovered that's making me more efficient. It's you sharing your journey as you learn and grow as a voice actor, an entrepreneur, a small business owner. So that's your second content pillar. And again, you could probably come up with 50 posts under that pillar pretty easily. And then the third pillar could just be Jay talking about Jay as a voice actor. It could be celebrating the amazing people that you're working with. It could be sharing some of the amazing projects that you've had an opportunity to work on. It's being excited about that award that you've been nominated for, you've won. It's sharing that new demo that you did. It's that upgrade that you made to your studio. So it's a little bit more promotional, but still trying to add value to the people who would hire you for voiceover so they can see that you're legitimate as a voiceover business owner. So again, you come up with 50 under that. You've got 3 pillars, 50 under each of them. That's 3 posts per week on social media for an entire year. And we just came up with that in a 15-minute conversation.
Well said, points well taken, and I was trying to scribble without looking down. Hope I can read it when I look
You can
back.
go back and watch this later and make notes on your own episode, but it really can be that simple. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the content is that you come up with.
Yes, I'll take that challenge and I'll rise to it.
Right on, Jay. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you so much for
Well,
coming
Mark,
on the
I
show and asking
appreciate
your
the
question.
opportunity. Thank you very much so. Have that fun at the Dr. Pepper. And because I am from North Carolina, we've been known to have barbecue. Come see me.
I've heard the pulled pork is really good there.
It is good.
Thank you so much, Jay. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.